Thank you, Farah, and thank you everyone for being here. We're also going to talk cleaner tech, not necessarily around sulfur and batteries, but around investing, which will be great. And with that, I wanted to kind of start, before we even get to cleaner tech, let's start at the top a bit. Mubadala, obviously an investment company. For investors, the primary motive is profit. So from Mubadala's perspective, would love to hear a little bit from you, Ahmed, in terms of, is climate change a distraction for Mubadala and your investment making decision, or is it kind of the contrary?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to address this esteemed crowd. For us as Mubadala, I guess we've answered that question more than 15 years ago when we started Masdar, if you recall. I mean, that was a time when investments in clean tech, in green buildings was still relatively in its infancy. But we took the decision that this is the right thing. We saw that this is the future, and we took the step. So for us, it was probably an easier decision. And I think as sovereign wealth funds, I think we inherently have a long-term horizon. I mean, we think in terms of sort of decades. We think in terms of sort of creating wealth and stability and a better future for our generations, to come. So I think, from our perspective, I think marrying that sort of that fiduciary responsibility that we feel towards the younger generations, with sort of the view that this is something that in the future will be profitable, I think was probably an easier decision for us.
So you're speaking a lot about purpose and sort of what's good for the environment in the world being good for business. How are you sort of putting that philosophy into action?
I think everybody is trying to do sort of the right thing in their own way. I mean, when we reflect on Mubadala and think of how did we internalize that, beyond the investments in Masdar and the other. I think it's about being purposeful in how you approach and how you integrate these considerations, climate considerations. So nowadays it is part and parcel of our decision-making process at the investment committee, where we bring climate considerations to the decision-making process. It's about sort of being purposeful in helping our portfolio companies, becoming more responsible, adopting net zero ambitions and targets. It's about sort of being also mindful of our sort of global footprint, measuring our emissions and looking at ways to mitigate that. So I think, from many perspectives, we try to internalize the sort of the decisions with a view of climate and the broader responsible investing mandate into our decision making.
So it sounds like responsible investing, from what you just said, is really ubiquitous across the organization and sort of your philosophical approach. What about clean tech specifically? So how are you investing in clean tech?
Well, I think, if we reflect, again, nowadays, everybody's investing in clean tech. I mean, it has become proven because, again, the level of sort of awareness across the board, the pull from the consumers, from the younger generation, has proven that sort of this is an area where profit pools exist, where money can be made, and so we're seeing a lot of deal activity in this space. Looking at some of the data that we went through with our colleagues recently, I mean, the level of deal activity in private markets relating to clean tech. If you look at 2019, around $75 billion. But just in 2022, that has risen to close to $200 billion. Wow. So again, this is a steady but impressive growth. Again, because of the imperative on one hand, but again, because of the profit potential to be had. And so within our Mubadala sort of various structures, various companies, looking at sort of all the way from sort of the VC angle, and looking at sort of investments in that space through some of our vehicles, going all the way to sort of buyout opportunities. If you think of some of the recent deals that we've done, investing in Tata Renewables in India, alongside BlackRock, around 525 million check size. But again, I mean, to us, there is there's the potential to sort of make a profit, but also, we're contributing towards the sort of the green economy and adding around 30 gigawatts to the Indian grid. So again, there's purpose there, but there's also sort of the economic angle. If you look at sort of other deals that we've done, investing in Skyborn Renewables, the largest private offshore wind developer with footprint in Europe, US, and Asia. I mean, these are some of the deals where, again, in the buyout space, we continue to deploy capital, but also beyond that. I mean, I think we also work very closely with our peers in the sovereign network community to try to find opportunities, advance the conversations, and sort of nudge our portfolios to be able to sort of make a difference in various areas where we invest as sovereigns.
Amazing. Obviously, a lot of work taking place. Similar to Farah's question before around batteries, like why aren't we using these today? Why isn't Tesla adopting them? Similar, obviously, in your space, I have a question for you around what is the barrier then for further investment in cleaner tech? How do we unlock that?
That's a good question. And I think, again, if you ask that question to different people, you probably get 10 correct answers. Because again, there's a lot to be done along the spectrum. But again, I think I speak for us as Mubadala. We're deploying, we're putting money in various. But the single biggest problem that we're facing, and we're also uncovered alongside sort of our partners, is the lack of consistent, reliable data. So data, I think, from our perspective, at least, is a big hurdle. And I think until we can come as investors, whether they be sovereign wealth funds, whether they be sort of money managers, private equity, alongside the regulators, and try to come to an understanding of the sort of on the data sets that will be used, making sure it's reliable, it's readable across the sort of geographies. I think that would be a hurdle, and I think we've done our part in terms in trying to advance the conversation on that through our work with the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund partnership in coming up with sort of an approach and a methodology for measuring data, for sharing data, which I think has been very well received by the investment community, and we continue to push for that, because to us, beyond just putting money, I think people need to understand the importance and the reliability of data to enable more investments in this space.
We could talk a lot more about this. I see my time's up, but I wanted to ask you one last question. Sure. What does success at COP28 look like for you and Mubadala? Is it around this idea of data and sort of coming up with more of a methodology and sort of principles around that, or if you could talk a little bit more about that?
Well, the way I think about sort of the success of COP so far, I think it's a number of things. But one of the things that I think is impactful is bringing diverse views around the table and having the tough conversations, but also being pragmatic. Because again, we cannot have discussions in silos. We cannot have discussions in isolation. Industry on one side, heavy emitters on the other side, regulators on one side. I think we need to come around the table and sort of and have these conversations. But beyond having the conversation, I think what is also important, as I think is in my view a success of this COP, is sort of the putting our money where our mouth is as nations, as sovereigns, and what the UAE has done with the Altera Fund, putting $30 billion that would mobilize $250 billion in capital towards solving sort of some of the biggest problems of our planet, and encouraging investments in the global south, I think is a great win. Is a great win for this nation, but also for everyone on this planet.
Wonderful. Well, Ahmed, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
And Farah, back to you.